Welcome everyone to our end of the month edition of CreateAWorld, where we all come together as collaborators in our cultural community of curiosity. We're here today to have conversation with each other and to invite you into that conversation by sharing thoughts and questions on YouTube. And when we come together and create a world, we're really we're setting a space for possibility. We mean create a world quite literally. We all stand for a world where each of us can show up as the full embodiment of our unique and essential nature, of our unique and essential design. And standing in that individuality actually requires community. And it actually requires collaboration with others. And so that is why we come together to create a space and a time where we are patterning that collaboration out into the world. That is why we're here. So given that we in the States have just celebrated Thanksgiving, I want to share a quote with you that I saw last night on Facebook. Sometimes Facebook can be a good thing. The work of the mature person is to carry grief in one hand and gratitude in the other, and to be stretched large by them. How much sorrow can I hold? That's how much gratitude I can give. If I carry only grief, I'll bend towards cynicism and despair. If I have only gratitude, I'll become saccharine and won't develop much compassion for other people's suffering. Grief keeps the heart fluid and soft, which helps make compassion possible. Now, when I was sharing this quote this morning with my fellow collaborators here, I actually remembered it as grief in one hand and hope in the other. But for me, hope and gratitude really go hand in hand, because to me, gratitude is acknowledging the beauty that we see around us, and hope is holding the space for more of that beauty. But I really do hold that to be whole, WHOLE, in this world, we need both sides. Because that's the full spectrum of our human existence. Joy and sorrow, we can't know one without the other. And we've been having a lot of conversation actually in the field of Tantra Maat about this idea of balance and the full spectrum of emotion. And if you watch Tantra's video introducing the prophetics that she offers in January, she talked a lot about the importance of showing up to be able for the fullness of the emotion that is the human experience. And to me, emotions are way showers. They tell us what really matters to us in the world. And so I do think that we need to make a place for grief. Because as the founder of Newfield would say, sadness, he would say sadness points us to what really matters to us. And so, those people experiencing grief over the loss of a loved one, especially around the holidays, it's pointing to the fact that that loved one really mattered to them. When we feel grief over what's going on with Israel and Palestine, that's because peace and human beings having the opportunity to just grow and live a life that matters to us. And yet we balance that with the gratitude of, the fact that, for instance, as collaborators, we're all here together, creating a world with certain principles where everything has a place. And everything's a part of everything else, and everything's always moving to the next greater whole. And we can stand in that even as things that break our heart are happening around the world. So I invite you today to explore the full spectrum of things that you may be experiencing emotionally, and what that has to say to you. And with that, I'll open it up to the collaborators.
I'll just start with one thing, because I'm observing as I move towards the prophetics. And that is a real conscious effort on each of our parts to really assess what we think we can hold. We've gotten so entrenched in belief systems and so entrenched in what's right or wrong, or what's even the truth, that as we begin to recognize that's our truth, not necessarily the truth, or if we examine, is that our truth? And then our ability to hold in our truth, regardless of evidence, template 3 and 4 and the creation exercises. And is probably right now, over the next 3 years as a seer, is probably the most important thing about the next 3 years. And always reminds me of the skaters in the skating rink, the one that's holding on at the end when they start swinging you around. You got to really be able to hold. Otherwise, you're going to go spinning off into the bleachers. And it's just not a good moment in time to find out who can hold on to you, so you don't spin out into the bleachers and then gain the strength, stamina, capacity to hold on in the centrifugal force that we're of an unbelievable level of shift that's going to occur over the next 3 years. That's my input for now.
I'm really impressed with what you presenced, Janice, in that quote. Because I just think it's so true. I think it's so true. And I think there's a tendency, someone said it just before we went live, there's a tendency to think, well, if I'm being in gratitude and hope and all of that, then I shouldn't be experiencing grief. And if I'm in grief or consternation or anxiety, I can't be in hope and gratitude. And we've actually been having conversation around that in our household, because my daughter's company is reconfiguring. So that means a lot of, they have a lot of very nice words for it, but it means she's getting laid off and has to start over. And she has a lot of anxiety, and she's had trouble with that idea that her appreciating her capacities, and how good she is, and her hope for getting a new job, and her gratitude for all that she's had, can balance or keep her nourished in order to feel her grief and anxiety around this. And we've been having a lot of conversation around that. And I think it really is true that a healthy processing or being with grief and anxiety allows for more of the other, gratitude and hope and capacity to love, if you don't get stuck in the moving meta point of it. You don't get stuck in the cynicism or the energy it takes to be part of generating the world you crave. So it's been, and that's just in our household, never mind the world at large, where we can't see the results as quickly. We stand in faith or gratitude or hope or prayers or whatever people call it, being present to the many, many life defeating things going on in the world. and we don't get to see the feedback as quickly. And it takes some stamina. It takes stamina. But it's essential.
And I'll chime in there. My family has had 2 major losses in the last week, really, really major. And I am in such gratitude to have this community that I'm sitting with today and many more, as well as my family community, all being able right now to hold just an immense amount of sadness and loss, and at the same time be able to live richly. Richly meaning just being in each other's company yesterday, and being together in it, and listening to conversations with my daughters and their father, and the ability to hold steady and just to go one day at a time. And so it's been an incredibly powerful process, and I love the concept that you were talking about being the skater at the end and getting whipped around. And it feels like we're in the middle of it. So we're in the middle, and there's arms everywhere. And I know that it's important for us to reach out to grab the arms. And that's part of our learning in this process, that sometimes I think, feel that, well, I have to shoulder this alone. And the more that we reach out to others to ask for strength, that is strength and courage in itself to be in the asking. So that's been a beautiful thing as well.
It's also the social aspect of the United States of America. I can't speak for another country. Is that we actually hold, if we reach out, we're weak.
Yes.
That we're incapable of our own sovereignty. But I really want to keep reinforcing, I have a huge amount of strength, stamina, capacity. I work with people that are dying and people that are in incredible levels of stress. And I have a huge capacity. And 3 days ago now, I, because part of my skill set, I guess, is to be able to be with someone in surgery and have the experience of being in the surgery, in the body, in the surgery. It's part of my weirdness. But when I came out the next day, I had nothing left. I had nothing left to give. And it was so beautiful because we have a transmutative wholeness group that pays attention to physical illness and physical challenges. And it was amazing to just put it in the group. Could someone slide in front of me and tend to the person who'd had surgery? Because I was spent. I actually slept 8 hours that day. And it was the point I want to make is we get lost in how to apply what we believe. But what happened in the transmutative wholeness thread is everybody just shifted. And Liz, you gave the example of like when the front goose is too weak to fly, she moves to the back and another goose takes the front. That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. And I'm on the borderline ready to cry because I think there's so many people that watch this Create a World that actually are healers, and healers need community. And healers need a collective of caretakers, because when they are spent, they need to be able to fall back and have another healer come into the foreground. And for me, a healer is someone who tends to the physical, non-physical, spiritual, emotional, mental aspect of a human existence. And healers are quite under the gun right now, even if they don't carry the shingle, even if they don't have a sign that says so. Because we're all healers in our own right, if we have any level of compassion or capacity to be there for another. That's the way in the door. Thanks.
It's beautiful. We're still tending to that person, and when I went to bed last night, I handed it off to another person who doesn't live in the States. And I could rest. I can't say it enough. It is so important to line up with even just one person in your life uh to team up with in this really powerful process. Even if you're not grieving in your immediate family, every conversation I have outside of here, outside of my family, uh, is about how people are feeling. And so teaming up to sit with each other is just, it's so relieving, so comforting, just to know that you're not alone in your process. And two, it literally gives you added strength. So yes, important.
That old American thing about pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps is a really dangerous for individuals today. One of the things we always talk about in the field is being one with the others in the field. And it's that even if it is only in your intention, you're putting out a network of connection, which can feed you or feed us. And I find that that's one of the harder messages to get through, particularly to Americans, because we were taught we had to do it all by ourselves, whether it's grief or happiness, and sometimes it's the public demonstration that's very difficult. I had a client once who had been married for a number of years, and her husband didn't want children. And she had just said, well, she accepted that because she loved him. But in this session I was doing with her, she connected to her grief of not ever having had a child. And I had remembered, and I think it's a Arab or Middle East function where they go, that really high-pitched, loud part of the grieving process. And I said that to her, and then she started doing it. Just this loud, tongue vibration. And it allowed for her to connect to the grief of giving up the child or the children because of her love for him. And I didn't see her for a couple years, but she divorced him and she had a baby. And she has the most joyous posts. And I think that little girl is maybe 10 now. And I think until you connect with the emotions within you, and I think because she connected, she was allowed to do it with me. That was the one with the other in the field. And I have never seen such joyous continually joyous since that baby was a baby and is now 10. How she has enjoyed and loved having the grace of that child in her life. So that was my first real introduction to the value of that public, that physicalness of grief. And it was like, I think it was like a shockwave to her system to say, what does it you do really want? Don't give it up because your husband says he doesn't want to have kids. You don't have to have him. So that's basically what she did. So it's very powerful. It's very powerful every time I read her Facebook posts to know that she was able to get what she wanted out of life.
Okay. Yesterday was a really exquisite day for me. At one moment, I was sitting in the feeling of recognition that there have been multiple years in my adult life where I was either alone at the holiday or with just my partner. And there's a sense that would rise that it felt incomplete to not be with multiple other people that families gather. And this year, I was with multiple other people in my heart. And I remember texting someone and saying, it was the first moment of recognition. There is no separation between us. We're all the same. Like you were saying about John Baptiste singing his beautiful intro to the parade yesterday. We're all the same. And after that moment of recognition, all of these different people were calling and checking in. And the joy of checking in is every single one of them that we talked to had a celebration to share in their lives. My youngest brother's getting married, and he's in his 50s, and he's found joy with another woman. My grandson has accepted a baseball scholarship to a university out of state, and he's moving with a passion to see where it goes. You know, my other granddaughter is totally into drama, and I told her about your one-woman show, Janice, and she was like, really? And I thought, oh wow, it's possible. You can explore this. Who knows? And just enjoying hearing everybody's joys coming through, that they were, like you said, Electra, doing what matters most to them. And what matters most in that moment for me yesterday, recognizing we are all the same. We are all in a field of no separation, really. And the joys and the hurts, they're all just simply a part of the schema of it. And so I'm in this little contemplative place of it. And I will say, I've been doing my brain time practice twice a day, and my brain is just like having a really interesting global experience of itself too. So I think channels are opening up in ways that I'm just really paying attention. Enough for now.
Since nobody has their mic open, for the first time in history, I texted, I videoed myself for my kids sobbing because it was the first time I ever really wanted to be with them on the holiday. Talking about this, just let it rip. And and I would have, because it really was what was present for me, like in the observings, it really was what was present. And I gotta give my kids kudos because they just included, they don't pity me. They don't, once I have an emotion, I do get their attention. But what was so cute was, so all day I got videos of what they were doing, mostly about the dog. Vision, the little teeny black dog my son Aaron has, and the gigantic big puppy that my daughter Kevin has. And so I went for a hike at what's called the volcanoes. I've been working with a PT, and I've had a frozen hip for, I don't know, 3 years, which means I just can't walk very far before it's really gruesome. It's hard to walk, but it's also incredibly painful, like a tension that just sends nerve endings through your body. And I was in an hour and a half before I realized I've been walking without pain, and I've been walking fast without pain. So that's the first thing I'm going to say, because I'm 77, everybody. I think I'm the oldest one here. So for those of you watching that think your days are over, they're not. But I was so elated, I decided to climb up one of the funnels, which about got to the top. And I didn't realize that even though my hip is limber, it has no strength. And I was at the top. And so I had to crawl. I literally had to crawl on my hands and knees to get to the top. And so I just enjoyed myself at the top, and sorry, and texted my daughter, if you don't hear from me by 2, I'm probably at the bottom of the hill because I've probably fallen. So I just stood there until I saw a ripe family. And I said, hi. I shouted, hi, can somebody help me down the first part of this hill? And everybody, they held the dogs and didn't let them come up. And a young woman named Lisa came up, and I said, I didn't realize that even though my hip is limber, it has no capacity to hold me, taking steps downward. It just wants to let go. And she couldn't believe it. She couldn't believe we just went down 2 major rock croppings, that I needed to lean against her to get down. And then I was off on my way, and I literally walked 2.5 hours. So this thing we talk about, we often think about it in our head, but when your heart is in the matter, you're capable of extraordinary feats that you didn't think you would ever. I'd never thought I would have my hip back again. And then I came home and thought, oh, good, I'll work around the house, and then woke up 4 hours later because there is a thing called recovery. But that was my Thanksgiving, and including my daughter being on point to make sure at 2:00 I was texting her and telling her I was in the car in case she had to come out 45 minutes to pick her mother up. So, but we have a quote in our family called always an angel. So I said, no worry, I'll just find an angel. And there they were, a little precious little family. And if they're watching this, because I told them about CreateAWorld, thank you, Lisa. Because turned out to be a remarkable Thanksgiving for me and my body.
I love your sharing of that Tantra. It kind of brings me back all the way to the beginning of the conversation about community and being able within ourselves to reach out when we need to reach out. And that brings me to all of the conversations today about grief and, our ability to be where we are when we're there. And that creates space for the capacity, just even recognizing, like, am I able to be where I am when I'm here? And when you have a community or collaborators like ourselves, that when one's down, the other's up, there's that balance. And how can we reach out to tap into the hearts and find that balance? And it really isn't about who can do it better, who's had it worse. It's how can we all rise? And now that takes me to Dr. Jim, and what he was saying about brain time. He, one of the things that really stood out was how he said the brain time helps you to function. It won't cure the insomnia, but it'll help you function with insomnia, if you want to put a label on it. And I'm like, what are we doing, each of us, the whole populace of, the entire world, what are we doing in our own sacred practices to help us function in the ups and downs and the grief, in the of the world? And it brings me to my own relationship of my journey with breast cancer for 10 years. And I just got, like, I hit the limit or whatever. I don't even know this stupid terminology, but like, I'm at my 10 years. And she's like, all right, bye-bye. You off all meds, and you don't have to call us unless you need us. And I'm like, bye-bye, happy Thanksgiving, and I'm like, that will always be a part of me. And there's the joy of beginning a new year medicine free. And I'm like, how can we collectively be in our full functionality of our way of being? And that takes tapping into our physical body, our mental body, our emotional body, our hearts, our spirit. It takes all of that. And CreateAWorld, for me, creates a space for that. So I'm grateful for each and every one of you to inviting me into this forum, because it's so potent when we can sit and be big hearts with ears.
Okay, I got to jump because I did my 10-year too. 1997, terminal cancer, blood cancer. And I was elated when I got past my 10 years. Of course, 1997, if we just subtract, obviously it's been a while. But you brought up something I feel like we're gathering these jewels and just trying to bring them into this like punch. And that is that it's really important to figure out what's going on newly, because I didn't have a prayer physically until I discovered homeopathy, not a prayer. I have someone very dear to me that did not have a prayer until they found a different type of therapy than the therapy that was going on in the 60s. So this whole idea of research this whole idea of find out what's going on and find out what works. And because we're an EM now, we're an electromagnetic community. We need to get over ourselves about that. But because of that, we talk about how it harms, but there's ways it helps. Because like in the brain time, that literally retunes EM, the creation exercise, retune EM. So this idea of we can live longer. And because I'm 77, my mother died at 79. And she did not look like me. And she was not capable of what I'm capable of doing. But the foundational one, Lori, that you brought up, that I want to offer it as a gift, is it's really okay to love ourselves. It's really okay for us to matter to ourselves. And a very popular guy, I think his name is Jesus Christ, did say, don't sacrifice yourself anymore. And as we begin to realize that as we recover, what are we recovering for? Why bother? We can get lost in the mesmerization of no recovery for our entire lives. I sit with people dying to realize they never had a life. They were so busy trying to recover to get to a life.
Mm-hmm.
And we're really in a turning point these 3 years. And it's why all of us here that you all are looking at are committed to create a world. It's not for getting your money or making sure you live in our belief systems. Hell, half the time we can't even figure out what our belief systems are anymore. Because we're present to one thing one day and another thing another day. And it's more about what is trying to have a place. But that's the Thanksgiving message that I have found, is this appreciation of myself and my journey with others looking on and cheering me on. And it makes it worthwhile. And I want to plug, we have something that is called the World of Unity, and it's going to be the end of the month now. And it'll be on the 29th of November, and you can go to my website, tantramaat.com. But just really urging people to embrace community. And it's not about, I walked into a fundamental church one time, and boy, you could feel the radiation of a new one to save. Pulse, pulse, pulse. And so I made sure I told the story about being saved when I was 11 so I could get past that border. But it's not about anything we believe in. It's about don't be alone. Don't be alone and just hang out in a chat. People just chatting about what they're present to and what they're experiencing, just like this. And then probably we'll change the name of it next year, but because the last 3 years for me were all about getting ready for these 3 years coming. And so I'm shifting the field of Tantra Maat in language, not so much in form, because language elicits the capacity to be present in ways that other language does not allow. So it's my spiel.
Tantra, I want to just grab onto something that you said real quick and highlight it, and that's the distinction between community and conformity. So, we are a pretty diverse bunch in our field of Tantra Maat in terms of who we are, how we show up in our daily lives, how we show up in the larger community, and even tenets that we hold. Just as an example, we have, in our group, we have a very diverse set of views on whether or not people should be vaccinated against certain things. So when we say community, we don't mean stepping inside the box, and the artificial safety that comes from operating inside a box. We are talking about embracing the journey of being your true self and finding your for me, for me this is, by having reflections with which to interact, right? The whole idea of having conversation with another person is so that you can find out more deeply who you are, and also hopefully who that person is as well. But we're inviting you into community to really become your true self.
And I'm going to add to practice what I've heard both Lori and Tantra particularly mention is, like the gratitude for the EM technology allowed Tantra to not have bounced down the bottom of the hill and have no one to connect to and no way to get help. She had someone on alert. There was the creativity of being open to an angel, and here comes this family. And instead of, oh, I shouldn't bother them or anything like that, that tends to be part of the pick yourself up by your bootstraps conditioning, which has its place and had its place. But it wasn't, I don't think, ever meant to be the only way of being. But instead of that, she just said, hello, can you help me? And for that moment, few moments, there was community. And maybe we don't know what form it'll take in the future, but there's no holding on to that. It was a coming together and a moving on for now. And the sharing the joy of being at the 10-year mark, which is an official designation of that reality's over, and sharing it and reveling in it. And that's a journey that carries a lot of grief with it, a lot of challenge with it. So that's the other side of community, is an elasticity of being, to know when to reach out, when to, what's that song? When to hold up, when to fold up. I love that song. An elasticity of being present to what you're present to and taking action. Being functional often means something, an adaptation. It doesn't mean in isolation anymore. It means, hey, can you help me get down this hill? I kind of need some help for the moment. Or, some of the adaptations I've done to be able to keep gardening doesn't look like what it used to. And at this juncture, who knows what's going to happen in the future, but and just to, that's a side of community that I really treasure and see more and more and more, is an activation of our creativity with another in the field and with ourselves in the field. So that's one of my big interests in community, for sure. Not are you in or are you out, like Janice said, the box.
I think the hardest thing for people to realize is that they're in a box.
Oh,
They don't know it, right? Because your historic family, your upbringing pretty much defines the approved acting, the approved being. And it is only in that niggle that you get that you're going like, that there is another way for you to be. You don't have to be like the family. We always used to talk about like the introvert who got born into an extrovert family has a really hard time, as well as the opposite. Families have belief systems about how they should operate. And you don't often know you are in a box. And I don't know, I think there are other knockings on the outside of the box that you start to realize that, oh, this isn't me. This is me doing what the family told me to do or society told me to do. I mean, women have had that issue for a long time. I was recently in a lot of news and stuff is, back to the feminist era, well, when it started, and women waking up to, I want to be more than a secretary. I had a friend who left high school, went to be a nun, left being that, and she figured out, no, I really don't want to be done, became a lineman for the telephone company. That would have been absolutely out of the possibility for my age group when we left high school and college, being a lineman. She loved it. And so I always picture her with a habit on top of a pole. But she, I think going into being a nun, she was following a path that she was told or thought she should be. And when she left that, she was starting to say, I can be more. And then she was a lineman. So I don't know what she's done with her life since then, but I'm always excited about that picture for her. So anyway, I think it's how do we recognize when we are acting from a box? And it's happened to me. I didn't realize a lot of times the way that I came to others, the way I came to the world was from a box that was probably established when I was a little kid. And until I realized that, until it's like the mime, you're going up against the wall like this, until you realize that that's not really there. And a lot of it, I think, is realized when we have others who see us not in the box. So as a friend, you support someone saying, well, that's not you. That made me think how you think you have to act, but that's not really you. And when friends do that, or they treat they treat us as if we were not in the box. I think that's probably it. That's how we become able to not be in the box anymore. And it's like my client, until she was able to acknowledge her grief, could not realize the box that it had placed her in the relationship. So anyway, that's my thought.
We're all out of the box thinkers, that's for sure. Have to acknowledge. And I think that takes me to creative thinking and creativity and that spark that we each hold that we don't always acknowledge in ourselves. And being an out of the box kind of human being it's a lot of fun.
Actually,
Bring fun
I
into
don't,
the
I'm
conversation.
not sure that's true. Because I'm very clear it's true for you because I watch you be out of the box from the day I met you. I overheard a conversation she was having in the kitchen at Harmony Ridge Lodge many, 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 many years ago. And I went, I want her. I want her to play with me. It was a very clear thought. But the reason I interrupted is because we're being forced out of the box. And I don't want us to keep swaying over into philosophy when we're actually confronted. What's happened to my goddaughter and Deb's daughter is she is forced out of a box. When you're ill, you're forced out of a box. When I thought I was out of the box at the top of the hill, I wasn't completely out of the box. I misinterpreted out of the box for a minute, but we're being forced into the very things that we've been having the opportunity to learn. people will go back into being more creative because it will help them survive what they can't tolerate and their lack of knowing what to do. You know, I mean, all of you know this. I've talked about it for years, for 45 years. I've talked about 23, 24, 25, and 26. And I think it's interesting in our conversations that we can refer to things that have been how people have been, but I don't think we're going to know how we're going to be. I don't think we're going to know at all, but I do think there's no way to stay in the box of our culture now. There's no way to stay. And I do think you're right, but isn't it amazing? I have a client, her favorite cravings, I'm actually doing it for free because she, first of all, couldn't afford as many sessions as she needs, but that would serve her, not needs like she's dysfunctional. But it's interesting, her two favorite things are playing with her kittens and making like TikTok videos. And there is a shame attached to that because it doesn't bring in money. It's just something she loves to do. And I've really been noticing that if people are not bringing in money, they consider themselves less than. But it blocks their ability to, there's nothing bringing in money. Why don't I just, in her case, enjoy my kittens and make TikTok videos? So this world of the United States of America that is all about your merit is your income. Your merit is your function, is just toppling. And so our survival, our psychological, emotional, mental, spiritual survival is actually going to depend on these things you're talking about. Community, it's going to depend on just do what you love. Remember way back when we started the creation exercises, the first tenet is just do what's life enhancing and don't do what's life defeating. But now the funnel is going right down into that may be all we have while the world tries to sort itself out. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but you are one of the few people I know that have high capacity
Perfect.
for creativity. Go ahead, Victoria.
I'm just gonna throw in another little thought. In the box, out of the box. What the hell is the box about? Maybe it's something beyond the box that we want to pay attention to. But screw the box.
I'll pass the edge. I'll pass the edge.
I'll pass the edge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'll say too, I was talking about, yes, it's fun, but awakening is really not easy and sometimes not fun at all. And so then
And very socially incorrect.
Yeah, it can be really messy. And sometimes, ugly crying and all that stuff. And so
And Deborah
I
in the
love
puppy
that.
pile. I can
Yeah.
see her trying to.
Go, Deb.
And there's boxes everywhere. There's boxes. I mean, when you say, well, what is the box? School is this public school system's a box. The woman, your client, Electra, whose dream was to be a mom. That's become like, oh, women, you're supposed to be more. That's her more. There's boxes everywhere. The feminist box, the New Age box, the Christian box. And even within Christian, there's about 50,000 of how you're supposed to be, and what if that's the self-expression? What if that's so it's at some point, that's a really good point, Victoria. Just, what the hell? Get rid of the box.
I think what Victoria said, what Liz said, and what you said just cracked a code for me. Because I can't find a Black gospel singing church in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Now the odds I could see would be there. But something just cracked in what you all said, because I'm still trying to find the box. And I did have this floating thought that went like this and did not stay around, called, why don't you just go visit all the churches? Maybe it doesn't have anything to do with, maybe this constant nagging thought is that something's just trying to have you find a place. And so so that just cracked it. So I'm just in deep appreciation. And I can't do Sundays because I work on Sunday mornings. So so it begins to move itself down into a operative possible experience, because I don't think it's the thing. So we have box, edge, and thing. because I don't think it's the thing. I don't think it's the belief. I don't think it's the doctrine, like us constantly having to explain we're not going to trap people in belief system if they show up on one of our community calls. There's a thingness that is haunts us about, we might get trapped by the thing, or we might get, or that thing we're searching for may not be there anymore, because we just may not be in the same model of existence at all from where we were.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. Thank you. I promise to tend to that.
And I think it's
I'm very
important.
shy. I'm very shy, so it's very hard. It took everything I had to put the gigantic box of cookies at the lady's door with her dog trying to come at me to kill me yesterday, just to thank her for all the little cookies she puts out for those of us that walk our dogs. So I am innately shy, but because I have you all can tease me, and I will go for it.
And I think we want to remember that there's a part of our biology. So like, for instance, when they're training elephants, they chain them. And yet at some point they no longer need the chain, because the elephant is conditioned to be chained. We've been conditioned to be inside the box. And the image that I have is that here we are standing in the middle of the box, and all four walls of the box just fall to the ground. And there's no more box. But we've been conditioned to stay inside of it, whether the walls are there or not. So part of the desire for community, and Electra goes back to what you said about other people being able to hold for us what it looks like for us to step outside of that box. And so that's the journey that we're finding ourselves in, because the various boxes are just dismantling all around us. And there's only I suppose it's a choice to step forward or to stay where you are. But I think in terms of making it to whatever's next, it is going to require us to step outside of what was the box and imagine newly. And that's where the power of community really, really serves.
And I don't think we have choice. I think we're being forced into the very things that we crave.
We are. There's an element of various boxes allow navigation and certain level of choice, and we're now being forced into choosing from being present to what you're present to, what's authentic, and how do you be. We're being forced into the beingness domain, which is quite a maturation.
I'm going to put that on the chat, Victoria. Janice, you want to close this off?
Sure. So thank you again for being here in our conversation. We really treasure this time with each other, and we treasure this time with you. And we're very grateful for you, because of course, you listening is what allows us to come together and give us the opportunity to have this exchange. So you are every bit as critical a piece of this conversation as those of us that are actually here on Zoom, live streaming out to you. We're moving into an intense time of year in a lot of places when it comes to the celebration of all the various holidays and everything that brings up, happy, grief, and all of the stuff in the middle. So I just encourage you to stay connected to us, stay connected to that which you love, and stay connected to those you love, and we'll see you next month.